It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
These tiny homes can be used as a main dwelling on a parcel of land, so long as you checking with the council. That's key, because you don't want people to come to you and they haven't done their homework, because then you've got this completed project and you say, well, we can't put that on your land because it doesn't comply.
Yeah, exactly. It does surprise a lot of people. Typically, we do these homes as a secondary dwelling, and that's a lot easier in Victoria due to the planning exemption things in place at the moment. But it can always be done as main dwelling. We build these to a 1A standards according to the NCC. So it's no different from building a normal house. You just got to do your planning permit application, check that you tick all the boxes, and then it can be done through a standard building permit as a main primary dwelling.
Yeah, so the larger shipping containers that you are building with are 40-foot high cube. So I'll get you to just explain the high cube aspect, because that is a higher height than normal. The fit out of these very much resembles a brand new home. Some people have this stigma, I think, when they think of a shipping container. Oh no, don't want to live in a shipping container. That's not me, it's too small. Yes, it is a small space, but it's horses for courses. If you want a smaller mortgage, this is an option.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And a good point you mentioned there was the high cube container. A lot of people get caught out when they're trying to build a container home and they use a standard cube container, which is only 2.4 metres high. So in our containers, we use a high cube container, which is 2.9 metres, and that means you can get an internal finish height of 2.6 metres. And that's where you can actually pass the NC rules as a 1A dwelling, where a lot of time you can't if you're just using a standard cube. Yeah, and then talking about the build quality of them, we build them like a normal home. We do not try and make these like a typical modular home that you used to see or a lot of builders are still building. We build them out of a timber frame plastered inside. So when you step inside, yes, they are a little bit narrower, but they're built and constructed just like your normal home you're living in. And as you mentioned, you have to sacrifice a bit of downsize to save more money. But a lot of our clients, when they do walk in, especially our models that have the large windows and bolt-on outdoor areas, it is a lot more homely than most people think. And as soon as they inspect them, the stigma that they had in their head for so long goes away pretty quickly.
In terms of the building code, these would be pretty tight, in terms of the airflow. You've got air conditioners in them. Are they being built slightly above what is required by the code?
They sure are. Being a container, they're already completely sealed. So if you've got a standard brick and mortar home, you've got a lot of gaps in that. In our containers, we don't have that whatsoever. We also kind of go above and beyond with the insulating qualities. Being a container, we make sure we do a moisture barrier, heavy earthwall, we use underlay. So they're heavily insulated and very well constructed. The idea is for these to last more than 100 years. And being a container that's meant to be out at sea in corrosive water for 25 plus years, we see that not being an issue with our designs.
Tell us if you've got an example where a mum and dad has come to you and said, look, we are just pulling our hair out. We don't know what to do. This could be an option for us. They sit down, they go through the numbers, they talk to you. Suddenly it's an illumination.
Yeah, definitely. And we're seeing it happen more and more often at the moment. We've even got one client we're about to start building for, and they've done the same thing. They've just built a brand new home, but because it was a small parcel of land, the house size isn't massive. So we're actually building one and putting it in the backyard for their daughters to live. And I think things have really changed in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, your kid used to turn 18 and you say, all right, time to get into the real world, look for your own place. But the way the housing market is at the moment, with rent just not being affordable, I'm seeing so many more parents come to me, and not even the children that are coming to me. It's the parents themselves saying, look, they want to give their kids a bit of a head start. They want them to start living by themselves, but I know they can't afford rent. So they're putting one of these in their backyard for 3, 4, 5 years until they save up, and then they can repurpose that unit as well as put a roof over their kid's head and help them kind of grow in the market themselves.
I think one of the other things too, when it comes to the backyard, a lot of people, they might have their backyard completely closed off and they're thinking, well, there's no way that we can get a completed shipping container on our backyard. There is absolutely no access. One of the things I think is a positive, because you're building these off-site, you're able to crane them in right over the house if necessary. Have I got that right?
Yeah, that's spot on. And a lot of people do think that there's not really an option, but we've got so much technology with cranes in front of trucks and that kind of thing that there usually is 9 times out of 10 always going to be an option. And the good thing is, because we build them off-site, our foot traffic is very minimal. The install usually only takes a day or two, and all the other works are completed off-site. So it's simply just doing some footings, the electrical and plumbing, and then craning it in, and it's pretty much ready to go.
Well, good morning, Craig. Very pleased to be here. And look, we advertise on both, but I agree with your comments. Facebook is a bit of an older demographic, and Instagram is probably where we put a bit more emphasis these days. I think that's where the market is, but certainly we're on both platforms.
Yeah, it's almost like Facebook is a little bit old-fashioned now, and the shiny ones are Instagram and TikTok. Well, Walkerville, let's talk about your local area. It's approximately 4 to 5 k's northeast of the Adelaide CBD. I think roughly about a 10-minute drive. Very, very prestigious where you're working and operating. It's a leafy enclave. Tell us a little bit more about this, because you've got that school, St Andrews, which is pretty popular.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful suburb. We're very, very fortunate to be working in such a beautiful suburb, but it's positioned right in between the heart of the CBD, and then you've got Linear Park at your doorstep. In addition to that, you've got some of Adelaide's best schools. You've got St Andrews Primary School, you've got Wilderness, you've got Prince Alfred College, St Peter's College, so you can take your pick. And that's one of the main draw cards that people really like this area.
Let's have a look at the affordability factor, because what's interesting right now is that affordable unit buying in Adelaide isn't just a go north story anymore. You know, you've got genuine options spread across the city, which is a big shift in how first home buyers are approaching location versus price.
100%. People are really focused on just finding a nice little suburb. I mean, if they can't get the house in the suburb they want, they're looking for a 2-bedroom unit. If they can't get the 2-bedroom unit, they're even open-minded enough now that they're looking at a 1-bedroom unit. You go back 5 years ago, that certainly wasn't the case prior to COVID. Things have really shifted and mindsets have changed.
Yeah, it won't be long before the preference is a studio, even smaller than a one-bedder. Let's have a look at the median property prices there in Walkerville. First off, to the houses we go. Just over 2 million, 2,080,000. This is the median price. Over the last 12 months, some pretty decent growth there, almost 16%. And you've got the median on the unit price.
The median's approximately 650,000 is what we're finding. And it really depends on whether it's a 2-bedroom or a 1-bedroom. There is a lot of that data skewed towards the old Transport SA building, which was converted from an office building into a residential complex. So they've got 1 bedroom, they've got studios, so that can influence the median sale price depending on how many of those have sold in the area. But typically you will find some of those 70s charming colonial style single level, which appeal to your downsizers more so.
Yeah, and the growth, it should be mentioned, on the unit market where you are, 21.7%. So that is pretty reasonable in the last 12 months. Looking at the numbers, just sort of drilling down on Salisbury Downs is the cheapest location when buying a unit, just over 400 grand. But places like Tonsley and Bedford Park aren't far behind. Buyers are clearly prioritising lifestyle and convenience, not just the cheapest postcodes anymore.
Correct. And the other thing is proximity to public transport. You've got the Tonsley redevelopment, you've got the South Road upgrade. So I think that's going to be appealing to a lot of lifestyle people, but also investors that have done their research and understand that with that easier access comes lower commutes, and hence it's going to drive demand.
And unfortunately, since Tuesday, you have probably been working out your expenses to cover the RBA's cash rate increase, making mortgages across Australia more expensive.
The RBA's target for inflation is 2.5%, and data for the December quarter showed year-ended headline inflation was 3.6%, underlying inflation was 3.4%. High inflation hurts all Australians. The board now thinks it will take longer for inflation to return to target.
So a lot of people are hoping the Reserve Bank is one and done with the rate hikes, but should they be expecting the RBA to undo or reverse more of last year's rate cuts?
The board has taken a cautious approach. They've made one rate rise this time, and we'll observe now what happens to financial conditions. We're already observing some tightening in financial conditions, including through the exchange rate a bit, and we'll wait and see what the response of some of the credit, housing, those sorts of things. I'm not predicting there'll be more rate rises, but I'm also not saying that if inflation does remain too high, that there mightn't be. Now, I know this is not the news that Australians with mortgages want to hear, but it is the right thing for the economy. I do understand that for mortgage holders, this isn't a great outcome. Having said that, what's also not great for them or for anyone else is if inflation remains elevated. The price level has gone up 20 to 25% over the last few years. That's, I think, what's hurting people. The board still has basically the same strategy. They're still looking to bring inflation down without giving up so many of the gains we've had. This interest rate rise has it comes across quite negatively. We're actually in a really good position. The labour market is really strong and domestic demand is recovery. These are good things, but it's just that we're supply constrained.
That is Michelle Bullock from the press conference on Tuesday afternoon. Let's take you to the Gold Coast and catch up with Josh Logan-Pye from Ray White in Surfers Paradise. And how was that Christmas New Year vibe on the Goldie this year?
As everyone would know, the Gold Coast is just an absolute beautiful place to be over that Christmas time and that New Year period. But we saw a huge amount of tourists coming into the area. We see a lot of people at that time of year flocking in, enjoying the beautiful weather and the sand. But a lot of people are looking up here to move. A lot of people coming through our inspections and our open homes and having that curiosity bug when they move up here to really start envisioning themselves living up here. So that time of year, we definitely get a lot of people from Sydney, Melbourne flying up and looking at property. So it's a great time of year for us.
And the Gold Coast is this standout location in places like Surfers Paradise, Main Beach and Benoa. House prices have jumped more than 330 grand in just 90 days. I mean, this is not a slow burn. That's a blink and you're going to miss it. It has pushed medians well beyond the $2 million mark. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. The main reason for that at the moment is that, as we said before, people get up here, they envision their lifestyle here. We've got great access to beaches. We've got hospitals out through there as well. The houses there are beautiful. People really love living in the close proximity to everything in through there. So, yeah, it's definitely on the rise and people are moving in fast, which is fantastic.
Yeah, say that, there's 330 grand in just 90 days, this massive jump. I mean, this has got to be surprising real estate agents that this jump has occurred, and it's not just beachfront glamour either. You look at Broadbeach to Burleigh, that saw another 250,000 added in a quarter. I mean, these are family and lifestyle areas, not fringe suburbs, and buyers seem to be just piling in pretty rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a compounding effect of lifestyle amenities in through here. It's a very active community as well. We see a lot of people going down to the beach, walking around, running, the schooling in through here, the shops. I mean, the amount of restaurants and cafes, there's the reason why everybody's coming in through here. And the great thing about those stretches as well, from Broadbeach to Burleigh, we have a lot of these small commercial centres that up and down the stretch of the highway through there. You've got boutique shops and restaurants and cafes and bars and everything. The nightlife's fantastic. It's a really nice place to live, and they've got the light rail coming in as well. So it's making it a lot of easy access for people to get from Burleigh up to Broadbeach to Pacific Fair to the shopping centres and getting down into Surfers Paradise if they're up here on holidays, or even locals just using that public transport, just making it a lot easier for everybody to get around.
Well, I think they've given us a signal in as much as they do. They're wary of giving signals, but a sort of coded message, I think, is that we should, unfortunately, probably expect another rise in May. I think that some of the language that was being used by the governor and in the statement it's suggested that they very much got a watching brief on this, and their forecasts for inflation show that they expect it to get a little worse, I'm sad to say, a little higher before it gets better. And that, of course, while they're never going to commit to what they're going to do, I think we can take from that it's more likely than not that we probably will get another rate rise in May.
Now, we should talk about the supply, drill down on that, if you will, from your standpoint and how you think that might unwind this year.
Well, look, what we've been hoping for some time that we would see a pickup in residential supply. I think it's been well documented, some of the challenges that developers have faced, and that has tightened the market up because, of course, we've had quite a bit of, strong population growth coming off the back of the pandemic. And so we've had this mismatch, and whereby developers, even though we've seen some price increases, they have generally found it challenging to meet the higher cost of construction, higher cost of labour, and of course higher interest rates. And we were just starting to see a picking up in development approvals, and certainly we were hoping, perhaps 6 months ago, we were hoping that we might be having a very different conversation about interest rates, and one more related to cuts that were going to make it a bit easier. But unfortunately, I think this prolongs some of those challenges on the supply front. It'll make it harder for us to see a strong ramping up in apartment supply. Unfortunately, it is going to be a bit of a slow grind, as I think we've become used to, by now.
Well, I'd love your insights when it comes to the commercial property sector, because there will be people that will be thinking, gee, is now the time to look at commercial? Commercial property, though, has been coming back, hasn't it?
It has started to come back, yes. So we see there, and often we get asked, so what's the outlook for the property market? It depends on which market, because it depends not only on location, but it also depends on sector. And within the commercial market, we've generally been through a difficult patch. So the increase in interest rates that we saw, the steep, of course, we've had this another rate rise, but really what impacted the markets was the big increase in rates that we saw from mid-2022 into the end of 2023, the really steep rise in the cash rate that pushed up borrowing costs across the board. And so for commercial markets, more so than residential markets, we saw them feel the impact of that. And we saw office values, for instance, drop by 20 to 25% on average. And, all cities really, we were seeing a decline in values. We had seen a decline in values in the retail sector as well, which started a bit earlier during the pandemic, and even the industrial sector, which had been really strong, was impacted by higher interest rates. But we're just starting to come out of that. Of course, this recent news this week is not helpful, and will probably slow down the recovery a bit. But having come off such a difficult patch, a lot of investors interested in commercial property are thinking that it might be a good time to get back into the market.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.